PETA is the largest animal rights organization in the world, more than 2 million members and supporters. Ingrid Newkirk has spoken internationally on animal rights issues from the steps of the Canadian Parliament to the streets of New Delhi, India, where she spent her childhood. She founded PETA over 30 years ago and is responsible for the biggest animal victories in the history, including she stopped the Department of Defense from using dogs in their wound labs. She stopped General Motors from using live animals in the car crash test. She helped pass the first anti-cruelty law in Taiwan. She's responsible for moving over 1,000 companies from testing on animals to cruelty-free methods. She's the author of over a dozen books on ethics and animals, and the subject of 2 documentaries on her life and PETA, one the BBC and one on HBO called I Am an Animal. And with this, I'll turn it over to Ingrid Newkirk. Thank you.
Thank you all very much for coming and for listening wherever you are out there. Very nice. I'm delighted to be at Goodall. It is certainly a world, and we'll be lucky if we retain any staff who've seen your campus. As Baby said, I am president of PETA, which means that I'm an animal rights activist. And for those of you who are confused as to what that means, I'm going to give you George Carlin's definition. George Carlin said, animal rights activists are the kind of people who, if they find cockroaches in their home, they develop a spray. It doesn't kill the cockroaches, it just fills them with enough self-doubt that they have to go somewhere and think things over. And I actually love that example because, in a way, animal rights is being about being kinder to even the least familiar, perhaps the animals that you call ugly or haven't thought much about, or all of them. Before we get to animal overpopulation, the dog and cat crisis, and why we do what we do, I thought that I should give a little primer on our philosophy, because sometimes people get confused by it, and it's really easy. It's basically, if you don't want something done to you, then please don't do it to somebody else who has feelings like yours. And that means it's the golden rule, really. That's all it is, just extended, as I think it should be, to every other living being. And you don't have to love animals to get that. One of my favorite examples is when Princess Anne in England was made a sponsor of the Royal Society for the Protection of Children. Somebody said to her, well, this isn't really up your alley, is it? And she said, well, I'm happy to do it because you don't have to love children or even like children to know that they shouldn't be treated badly. And I think that's what animal rights is all about. What we do, I think, without giving it much consideration, is we treat human beings as if they were gods, and we treat all the other beings on the face of the planet as if they're trash. And when you think about that, that doesn't make any sense, because we are certainly all in this together. If you took Biology 101, if you weren't flirting or looking out of the window, you know that we are all animals. It doesn't really matter what sort of package we come in. All of us feel pain. We all grieve. We all feel love and joy. We all want comfort. And we're all afraid of dying badly. Don't know if you can really see this. The detail on it is so beautiful in real life. The proud father and the proud mother looking at the baby gorilla who is thumping his chest. Some animals are smarter than others, just as some human beings are, and some are actually smarter than we are. For example, chimpanzees beat out college students in tests where images appear on a screen and you have to remember them all and then punch in what you remember when the screen goes blank. And then in 2008, there was a stunning feat. The British card champion for remembering the order of an entire pack of cards within 30 seconds, which is really something, was beaten by a chimpanzee. And now they're both barred from Las Vegas. But it's not just the animals that we think of as being smart, like chimpanzees who are smart. It's not just the dolphins. I think many of us have seen the videos of dolphins will actually attach sponges to their noses when they go down onto the rocky ocean floor to protect themselves. You see these thought processes, but it's not just those animals. It's not just dogs. Like the one, I don't know if you saw, Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson was on one of the shows recently with a dog who has memorized, he's been taught, he could probably do more, he's been taught the names of 12 or 13 or 1,400 toys. So Neil deGrasse Tyson had the dog come into the room, the toys were in the adjoining room, and he would say, frog. And the dog would look at him and then go next door, and out of this mountainous pile, bring him back the frog. And then Neil deGrasse Tyson would say, octopus. And off he'd go, and he'd bring the octopus back. So he had this enormous human vocabulary. So what Neil deGrasse Tyson did was try to stump him by putting a toy in the enormous pile that the dog had never seen before. And then when the dog looked at him, deGrasse Tyson said, whatever it was, rutabaga. And the dog cocked his head, obviously had never heard that word before, went in the room, came back, looked at him again. deGrasse Tyson said, rutabaga. Dog went next door and brought back the only toy that he didn't know the name of. And I always think they probably know much more than this. It's just that we don't bother to figure it out. They have to figure it out. Chris Evans is a university professor, and he specializes in the study of ethology, which is animal behavior. He makes a very strong case for the intelligence of chickens. He said chickens exist in stable social groups. They can recognize each other by their faces, which sheep can and many other animals can. We just don't think about it. They have at least 24 distinct cries that we humans have recognized, including cries that tell a chicken if a threat is coming from the sky or it's coming from the ground, these different alarm calls. And they're very good at solving problems and overcoming obstacles. So Professor Evans says he goes to conferences and he talks about these attributes, these abilities, and people, he says, always think that he's talking about monkeys, and he waits till the end, and then he says, no, inconvenient as this may be, I'm talking about what you may have had for lunch, these animals. So judging individuals, any individuals, by their intelligence is a sticky piece of business, because as we all know, there are different sorts of intelligence. You talk about someone who's perhaps uneducated, but they're street smart, and in a certain environment, they can certainly do better than someone who is a PhD in something like metallurgy or astrophysics. Jane Goodall is the world's foremost authority on primates, and she once overheard some people who were laughing at the chimpanzee Michael Jackson used to have, Bubbles. You may remember Bubbles. This was at a party, and Bubbles was there. They had dressed him in a tuxedo. They had plonked him at a table. He had a mug, a plate, and a knife and fork. He could drink from the mug, but he was struggling with the knife and fork, with those hands. And they were laughing at him, and they're not meanly, just saying, well, he's almost human. You know, he's subhuman. He's struggling here, but he's not up to par with us. And Goodall said to them, hang on a minute. You know, she said, if you and a chimpanzee or a bird or a squirrel were placed in a jungle somewhere in their environment, and you didn't have a GPS, and you didn't have a computer, you didn't have anyone to ask, no street signs, you didn't have any clothes, there wasn't a supermarket, all the things that are the jungle, who do you think would be the superior being? Not only who would survive, but who would run circles around you, each to their element. It's not just intelligence. There are other differences that have been used through the ages to justify prejudices, because that's all they are. And I think we have to do our best to get away from all prejudices. Our society has done terrible things in the past, we all know. We've institutionalized people with disabilities. Look where Stephen Hawking would be if he had been born 100 years earlier. We have enslaved others simply because of the color of their skin or because we had the power to. That's the key element. We've given pox-infected blankets to Native Americans and much more. The circus used to actually tour with pygmies and Eskimos that people could gawk at and laugh at. The highly civilized people were the gawkers and the laughers. We have a project called the Animal Liberation Project, which tours the national mall and university campuses, that points up some of the similarities between what we have done, and in some cases still do, to humans that we shouldn't, and things that we still do to the other species. The main point is, of course, that the package an individual comes in should be absolutely irrelevant. If you burn a pigeon with a cigarette, they hurt, just as if you whip a child or a horse, they both hurt, they feel it. So no matter the color, the race, the religion, the gender, the shape, the species, they're all individuals, and that, I believe, is the heart of what we have to remember in our treatment of others. So while the animal rights movement is about animals, it's really about us. It's about human beings and how we conduct ourselves, and if we can overcome the things that we have been taught that aren't fair. The Dalai Lama, who I quote in my One Can Make a Difference book, gave a talk once. I love this story. He was outdoors, and he has a wonderful sense of humor. It was evening, and the moon appeared. And the Dalai Lama said, "Do you see the moon up there?" And everybody looked and said, "Yes." And he said, "Isn't it beautiful?" And of course, everybody said, "Yes." And he said, "Yes, but you don't live on the moon. You live here. And our job is to make it beautiful here." And I thought, that's a little bit like our job. It's very easy for us to condemn another nation for bludgeoning seals, or for hunting whales, or for eating dogs, for example. But what's different and difficult for us is to look at our own plates, our own habits, the things we do, and decide, I want to make it beautiful here, not just in some faraway area. So kindness is a virtue that must be a virtue in principle and in practice. Take what we do to animals in laboratories. Once upon a time, and it hasn't been very long ago, we used orphan children. We used blacks in the South in syphilis experiments. We used Irish immigrant women in sexual experiments for surgeries. We used anybody who was human we could get our mitts on, and today we can get our mitts on the other species, the animals. By the way, I am delighted. Google has a new science project, and no invasive experiments on animals are allowed, and I am just so thankful. We have whole human DNA on the internet. We have vital human clinical and epidemiological studies that are crying out for funding while we're busy giving cocaine to monkeys in labs. There's a 6-month to a year waiting list if you are a human addict and you need to get into a treatment program, but you don't have the money. And it isn't just the experiments themselves which need to be examined so thoroughly. It's the fact that studies have shown that the fear of the animals in the lab is a factor that deserves attention. Animals' adrenaline, their pulse rates, their heartbeats go through the roof just when the knob on the door turns or they hear footsteps walking down the passage, because they know nothing benign is going to happen to them. Somebody is there to take a biopsy or a blood sample or drag them out of the cage. I'm going to show you a very short video here of what's done to animals in the largest testing laboratory in the world. It's called Covance, and we were there undercover to shoot this video. There is no sound, but you can imagine the sound. And better quality video is on our website, PETA.org, if you can't see this very well. And you can just see they are tattooed, the heartbeat of that monkey, and imagine being stuffed into a plastic tube or strapped into a metal chair. The panic and the fear is phenomenal. The workers in this lab also screamed at the monkeys, slammed them into the metal, cage bars, and more. When Covance found that we had that video, they went very swiftly into court in the United States and in the UK to get us to be barred from showing it. But as you can see, luckily we won. I have shown that at scientific conferences all over the world. People have the right to know. I think it's that simple. And yet fortresses are being made out of laboratories and farms now. There is even legislation pending in Iowa to make it a crime to film in a farm without permission. So I think these extra protections are not what our society, a free and open society, should need. People can choose. You can buy shaving cream, floor cleaner, anything you want that is not tested on animals, that's tested in humane ways. So we have a compartmentalized view of animals. Some we love dearly and we would defend as we would defend our child. We don't even think about that. And then there are others, like Tilly, who is an orca, a killer whale, who was taken from his pod, from his mother, his family, when he was 3 years old, in the waters off Iceland, and shipped to SeaWorld in Orlando, Florida, where he has remained in a concrete box, basically, not even able to swim the length of his body for a long, long time. You can see him on Google Earth. You can look down on him and see him in his concrete box, never able to swim or smell anything or meet any other orcas, just his life given over to entertainment. I don't think you can see this picture of the circus monkey. She's absolutely sad, she's in her little dress waiting to go into a traveling show. And here is a picture of a Ringling Brothers elephant baby. This is what they do. They take them away from their mothers when they're very, very young, and the mother stands and watches, so she remembers what happened to her, and the baby knows that the mother can no longer help. They tie them down by all fours and they beat them. You can see the man's holding the bull hook, which is like a fireplace poker with a metal hook that they jab them under the ears, under the backs of the thighs, in all these places where you can't see them bleed. And some of them, as they grow up, have heavy scarring. This is how they're taught, with the bull hook tying down an electric shock for the circus. The circus would like you to believe that they train with peanuts, but they train with the bull hook and the electric prod. I'm going to just show you a little tiny snippet of training behind the scenes, other trainers being trained on how to deal with elephants behind the scenes.
Prepare that foot off. Tub. Tub. Daddy, come here, Tracy, Tub. Don't touch him. Hurt him. Hurt him. Don't touch him. Make him scream. Ida, if you're scared to hurt him, don't come anymore.
There's much, much more. And when you see them, an elephant holding another elephant's tail, they use the trunks and hold the tail and they're in a line, never forget. They break their tails deliberately. Ringling's elephants have broken tails. The pain of that is extraordinary. And when they make those elephants hold the tail of the elephant in front of them, then what they do is they jab the elephant, the lead elephant, so everybody has to move up. And that's what makes them move, is the pain and the fear of the bullhook. But when you think about it, what do animals need? They don't need very much. They don't need the right to vote, even though in the past they might have done a better job than we did. They don't need supermarkets, plastic bags, skating rinks, shopping malls, fast food restaurants. They don't need really much at all. All they need is to be allowed enough basic food, basic water, shelter from the elements, or allowed to have it, their homelands, allowed to exist. And they have precious little of that with our construction and what we do. Many of us in our society view them as hamburgers, handbags, tools for research, amusements, these kinds of things. And what they need is a little respect. And the greatest respect of all for most of them is just to leave them in peace. I have something else the Dalai Lama said that I love, which should be our motto, which is, no matter which religion you have or none, the best religion of all is kindness. And while I'm quoting, I'm going to throw in the American Indian poet Joseph Bruchac, who wrote, "The old man must have stopped his car 24 times to climb out and gather into his hands the small toads, blinded by our lights and leaping like live drops of rain. And I kept saying, you can't save them all, accept it, get in, we've got places to go. But leathery hands full of wet brown life, knee-deep in the roadside grass, he just smiled and said, they have places to go too." And that would be a wonderful thing to remember. So that's the philosophy. And I'll give you a little bit of the nitty-gritty. People ask me, what is the most important thing you can do if you care about animals and you don't like what's happening to them? And I have a whole book of ideas you're very welcome to take called Making Kind Choices. But the most important thing is to go vegan. The nags that we are. Most people don't hunt, most people don't wear fur, but everybody eats. And in fact, it's quite horrible to think about this, but the most frequent interaction most people have with animals is 3 times a day when they sit down to eat them. And in America, we are now eating 1,000 chickens an hour. Excuse me, a million chickens an hour. That's an awful lot of individual birds. If you've ever known a chicken, they have personalities. They're absolutely wonderful animals. Vegans, by the way, are also called pure vegetarians, which can be confusing. I never use that term. It sounds as if you have to go to church and you can't drink beer. So I just say vegan. So I'm going to offer you a few reasons to consider this proposition.
I'm Alicia Silverstone, and I'm a vegetarian. There's nothing in the world that's changed me as much as this. I feel so much better and have so much more energy. It's so amazing.
But wait.
And by the way, if NBC didn't like the PETA ad, they are going to hate the new one from the Beef Council.
That wasn't the other one, it was another one Jimmy Kimmel showed, but that's pretty good. It always amazes me why anybody asks why you're a vegetarian. And I always think it's like being asked why you don't support rape or why you don't support murder. Because actually the animals are killed, they don't want to go, and it's pretty bad. If you've also ever seen the cows having their horns removed without painkiller, or their beaks cut off if they're chickens, or if they're pigs having their tails cut off, all without painkiller, you can only describe it as torture. But here is another video that is a few reasons to go vegetarian.
Reasons
to become
a vegetarian.
Vegetarian.
Number 1.
Because heart disease
Begins in childhood.
Number 2.
because a vegetarian diet.
Reverses heart disease.
Number 3.
Because eating meat and dairy.
Makes you fat.
Number 4.
Because you shouldn't have to lie to your kids about the food that you eat.
Number 5.
Because in every package of chicken,
Every package of chicken.
there's a little poop. Poop.
Number 6.
Because meat is filthy and bloody.
Number 7.
Because no living creature wants to see her family slaughtered. You hear that?
Number 10.
Because mad cow disease.
Is in the U.S.
Number 11.
Because it's violence you can stop.
We can stop.
Number 12.
Because no one should have to make a living by killing.
Number 13. Because it takes a small person to beat a defenseless animal.
And an even smaller person to eat it. Number 15.
Because the grain used to feed them could feed them.
You need more?
Because they're defenseless.
Because when animals feel pain,
They scream too. Because they don't want to die.
Because they feel fear.
because no matter how you slice it, still flesh.
Because commerce
Is no excuse for murder. Because everyone wants to be free. Because eating fish doesn't make you a vegetarian.
Because might doesn't make right.
So those are just a few reasons. Every summer, PETA goes out to festivals and we serve vegetarian hot dogs. Of course, you can now get them in all the ballparks and so on, but it used to be quite a novelty. And when I fry up these or whatever, these hot dogs, people come over and they always say, "What's in those things?" Because it says vegetarian hot dog. And you say vegetables. And they say, "Oh, I don't know about that." It's usually men, I'm sorry, but it's usually men who wrinkle their nose and say, "Well, I don't know about that." And you say, "Well, do you know what's in the regular hot dogs? You know, the skin around the rectum, the nose, between the toes." And they go, Yeah, I think I'll have one of those. I think it always shows you that change is hard. People resist change. People don't want to change. I was in the airport. There was a little cup, and it said, "Afraid of change? Leave yours here." That I need that for our animal rights movement. Before we move on to why we do the things that we do with naked people and what have you, which was one of the questions, so I thought I would cover it, and to dogs and cats, just allow me please to give you a few facts about factory farming, since that is the most important thing. It takes 22 hours in chicken hell for a chicken to lay just one egg. Lights are on all the time, and that egg is mixed so casually into cookies and cakes. Chicken hell means thousands of them packed into a shed, perhaps 7 chickens to the size of space the size of 2 itty-bitty computers, meaning that they can never stretch even one wing. They can never even take a single step. They stand on sloped wire floors, which you can just imagine how that would be for 20 minutes or 10 minutes. They stand on them for their entire lives. And in fact, their claws grow around the wire. Factory farms make every second of their lives total misery. When I was 7, in my family, we stopped eating veal. My mother had been to the supermarket and she saw some protesters out there protesting how veal is produced. But what I didn't realize is that the veal industry is created by the dairy industry. I didn't connect those dots. Not everybody realizes, amazingly, that a cow has to be pregnant and give birth in order to give milk. They don't just give milk. This is for their baby that they produce this milk. And people also say, well, they don't kill the cow for the milk, do they? But yes, they do. The cow who is kept for her milk has a far worse life than the cow who is kept for beef. Because every single time she gives birth to a beloved calf, if that calf is male, a tractor comes along, attaches a chain to the calf's hind leg and drags him away from her. That mother loves her baby the way any mother loves her baby. And cows will go ballistic trying to follow that tractor, lowing, stamping, wanting her baby back. She is artificially inseminated on a thing that even the farmers call a rape rack. When her baby is born and taken away, she is re-impregnated. And the reason the baby is taken away is because we want the milk to make into cheese toppings for our pizza and our burgers, or to drink that was meant by nature for that child. But with the child out of the way, then we can package it and send it to the supermarket. And when she is worn down, when she's older than the beef cow, and she maybe has mastitis or pink eye or whatever, her body is just broken from this constant overuse, then yes, she's killed, she's kicked, and she's electroshocked down the ramp into the same slaughterhouse the beef cow goes into, only by this time she's in worse shape than he. If the cruelty argument isn't enough, maybe the revulsion factor should be. They always say that that's a key element in what we decide to do. Meat is decomposing flesh. And 60 Minutes called that liquid in the bottom of the packets in the supermarket where it starts to defrost, fecal soup. If that isn't appetizing, I don't know what is. And if you ever go to a chicken factory farm, you can smell it before you get there. The same with a dairy farm that has veal calves. Veal calves get a disease called scours, which is a diarrheal disease because they're not on their mother's milk, and you can smell that. The stench of months of accumulated waste in the factory farms burns your eyes. If you walk in the door, your eyes start to sting, which is why people don't spend any time in them. They wear a mask, they go in, they remove the dead, but the animals are in there at ground level all the time. In fact, some of the pigs are on slatted floors, And when they lie down, all that waste comes up from the bottom. And I have been in slaughterhouses, by the way, not only for horses and cows and chickens, but also for dogs in Taiwan. And most people are stop about dogs in a slaughterhouse being strung up. But may I tell you that as frightened as they are, as much as they struggle and they try to get away, and they must be thinking, this can't be happening to me. How could you ever imagine the scenario that you're facing? It's the same, no matter the animal. It's not just the dogs. They all want to get out of that place. It smells like hot death. I used to smell, when I first became a vegetarian, a chicken roasting in the oven and think, oh, that smells good. Go to the slaughterhouse. You will never forget what it smells like. It's the smell of hot death. That's all I can say. So I recommend to anybody who thinks, oh, I can't go there, just spend a couple of minutes. I make a link on my email to Paul McCartney's video, Glass Walls. He always said if slaughterhouses had glass walls, everybody would be vegetarian. Because if you were eating other things, you would see crops being picked, you would see fruit being picked from the trees, you would see things that don't stink. You would see things that are pretty. But if you're eating animals, if a slaughterhouse had a glass wall, or restaurant had a glass wall, you would never go there. So I asked him, please look. And like Biz Stone, Russ Simmons, Ellen DeGeneres, even President Clinton now, except for a little fish, it can't be that hard to do. So moving on, one of the questions that came up that I saw appear was people asking, why does PETA go naked against fur and perform other antics that some people find shocking? And here are some of our ads. I'll show you. This is Eva Mendes. We have whoever that is, whose name escapes me, and that one. And we have, he just changed his name, and another one. So we do these ads all the time, and we do it to be provocative. We're like Dante Rossetti, I suppose, the painter, who was once asked, why does he make a spectacle of himself? And he said, well, I make a spectacle of myself. That gets people to look, and then I can talk about my serious work. And that's us. At PETA, we have learned that the press is like your cat. If you talk seriously to your cat will fall asleep. Your cat will walk away. But if you wiggle your little finger under the door, even though your cat knows it's just your finger, he can't resist coming over and having a look. So that's the wiggle of our little finger, is to do something that the press just can't resist. Every social movement knows this. Coca-Cola knows this. You have to get press attention or your message doesn't get out. So by being provocative, we get thousands upon thousands of people to come to the website to see ads like the ones we just showed. And then, maybe they can't look at the gore, but they can look at the gorgeous, and then they get an education. We did this commercial for the Superbowl. Let me just say that actually the Superbowl, the channels, the networks get millions of dollars a year, obviously, from meat and dairy advertisers. And they're not going to take our little pittance once a year. And we knew that, so we came up with a provocative ad that we knew they would reject, and this is it. So, as a result of that commercial, 1,118,393 people visited our website, PETA.org, within 24 hours. All of them stayed and learn something about animals. And a lot of them downloaded either Chew on This or watched Meet Your Meat or watched the Paul McCartney Glass Walls. So that tactic works. We have decided it is true that sex sells. It's not all naked. There are other ways in which we get attention. We ran this ad, which is Ricky Gervais and Pink talking about skins.
Hello, excuse me. I think that's mine. Yeah, that belongs to me.
Hey, I paid a lot for this.
Well, actually, I paid a lot more.
What the? Hey, wait a minute. That fur is mine. It's mine. It's mine. Give me my coat. It's my coat. Look, give me it.
My coat?
Give me my coat.
My coat?
Give me my coat. It's mine. Give it. What kind of a person steals a guy's coat?
And when they came to the website to see that, they stayed to watch this.
Hi, I'm Martha Stewart. I'm a big believer in freedom of choice, but I also believe in making educated choices, especially when our decisions affect the lives of others. I used to wear real fur, but like many others, I had a change of heart when I learned what actually happens to the animals. Let's take a look. Now, I want to warn you that some of these pictures will be very disturbing, and you may have to look away, but at least listen. To kill the animals without damaging their fur, neck breaking and electrocution are recommended by fur trade associations in Europe, the United States, and Canada, and is outlined in many manuals and guides. Anal electrocution, as demonstrated here by the Secretary of the Canada Fox Breeders Association, is also suggested. Poorly trained fur farmers, such as this one in Illinois, often don't get it right the first time and continually re-electrocute the struggling animals. In China, the #1 fur-producing nation in the world, animals are swung by their hind legs into the ground, breaking their necks or backs, but leaving them fully conscious as they are skinned alive.
So people got an education, came for one reason, got an education. We have people working in all sorts of places, including in China, where 70% of the fur in this country comes from. And you can imagine how hard it is for them to stand still and not be detected, shoot the video. Including, here's a slide of a rabbit. You can barely see it on this projection, but if you could, you would see how dismal life is for these animals on fur farms. This Donna Karen, we have a campaign against her now for using Chinese rabbit fur in her collection. And it's not just the mammals. There is things I think that would make you sicker than you can imagine for exotic naked skins. There's a rabbit pelts lined up outside the, and here's one of our exotic skins ads. And here is them skinning pythons for bags and shoes and belts. And here they are again. Of course, nobody cares. If it's a snake, you don't bother to render him unconscious before you take his skin off. Well, that's that overview of why we do what we do. But let me talk to you about dog and cat overpopulation. We have a program in Lower Virginia and the poverty pockets of North Carolina where that picture was taken to help dogs who are outside on chains their whole life, winter and summer. One of the things we do is help sterilize them because we, not only there, but all over the United States, we are facing a dog and cat overpopulation crisis. It's not just a problem, it's a crisis. Every year, over 25 million dogs and cats are born in the United States alone. That's 7 times the number of human beings born. 8 million are abandoned and put out onto the streets. That's more than the population of Switzerland. Dogs and cats just thrown away every year because they are inconvenient. They are left at animal shelters every day of the week, and in California alone, you see nearly 1 million animals taken into shelters every year. 1 million. That's over 20,000 animals a day. The 5 city shelters in Los Angeles alone receive 80,000 animals a year who are unwanted. And you may think, well, finding a home for 1 animal, I could do that. Maybe I could find a home for 2 animals. If I really push my luck, I might be able to find a good home for 5 animals. But with these figures, if you do the math, it's totally impossible to find homes for all these discarded dogs and cats, which is why shelter euthanasia is the #1 cause of death of dogs and cats in the United States. And it's not the fault of the people who work in the shelters, those who not only do their best to comfort the animals who have nowhere to go, but have to deal with the people who are throwing them over the counter saying, "You're not going to kill them, are you?" These animals don't know where their families disappeared to. They're extremely confused, they're depressed, and many of them have behavioral problems because they're in a panic. You know, if you had a family who suddenly left one day or put you in prison somewhere in a strange place, yes, you'd be a little disturbed. And that's what the shelter workers have to do, have their job. Only 16% of our animal companions come from shelters. The rest come from breeders and pet shops and someone down the street who had a litter. So 16% from the shelters means the rest of them are going to be put down. No-kill shelters don't solve the problem at all. If they're not among the many who are being busted for hoarding, I don't know if you've seen the hoarding shows on television, there are hoarding shelters, in hoarding them in hideous conditions, in small cages, without proper care, they may be helpful, it's true, because they can take a small population and look after them. But they're not working at the root of the problem. No-kill shelters quickly reach their capacity. And then what do? They have to close the door. They have to say, "I'm sorry." Go to the open admission shelter that's down the block. Don't come here. We have no room for you. And even so, in no-kill shelters that have reached capacity, it's very common to see cages stacked up to the ceiling and animals who have no life. They're in a see-through box, year after year, turning in circles. Here's a no-kill shelter we just busted. So if that noise is uncomfortable, can you imagine living in it day and night, year after year? And that's what we face. We have just busted another no-kill shelter. I think it was called Life for God's Sacred Animals or something, down in the Carolinas. And we'll do that. And thank you. It had over 300 cats living in small cages. Who were there for up to 7 years. We took many of them away, and they were unable to be saved. Over 100 of them had to be euthanized right away because they had dental disease, tumors, all sorts of problems that couldn't be fixed because of neglect. So what has to be done is to get people to adopt. Anyone you know, only adopt. Here's an ad that we have that says, "Breeders kill shelter dogs' chances." Another reason not to buy a dog from a pet shop is because no matter what you're told, the chances are that that dog came from a puppy mill. And you may have seen specials on ABC about puppy mills. This is something farmers have now in the Midwest behind their homes, where the animals are kept up on wire. And they have no life. They're exposed to the elements, and they're used just to churn out puppies that are then shipped to these pet shops. You'll have to turn the volume down or we'll get more complaints, but here is one of those puppy mills.
Constant confinement drives the dogs mad. Some begin to bounce off the walls, literally. Others pace, not just for short periods of time, but constantly. Deprived of proper exercise and companionship, this is the only life they know. Their whole world is confined to a small cage. For many of the dogs, that inescapable reality sends them spinning endlessly in circles. Although the speed at which this dog spins further into madness seems unreal, the tape is being shown at normal speed.
It's insanity, and that's where the puppies come from. So, as for dog breeders, those are pet shop puppies, no matter how kindly a breeder feels towards the animals or the type of dog or cat that they breed, there is no such thing anymore as a responsible breeder. It's just so grossly irresponsible to breed more litters into a world where we have animals who are being put down because they have no homes. That's the problem we have to face. We have some very pointed videos because people aren't paying attention, and I'm going to show you 3 of them. I think we have to turn the volume up a tiddly bit, but here are 3 of our very pointed videos that make people pay attention to this issue.
That's a great point, Cindy, and that's why it's important for us to continue to dock the tails, crop the ears, and create that clean look. It's so important. I'm sorry, sir. I think you have the wrong meeting.
Oh, is this the American Kennel Club?
Yes, but, we're discussing...
You believe in the sanctity of pure bloodlines, right?
Yes.
And breeding to achieve a master race?
Well, master pedigree. They're...
Race, pedigree, I mean, that's just all semantics. I'm going to fit right in here. You're my kind of people. Here, they're going to be snacks later.
Honey, we need to talk.
About sex.
Yeah, we think you should be having it, sweetie.
A lot of it.
Get up there and nail everything you can.
If it's got a pulse, you should be wrapped around it.
What if I get pregnant?
So what? You should pop out all the kids you want.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we can leave them in the shelter, dump them in the street, whatever.
It's really not important.
I'm really glad we had this little talk.
My little girl's gonna get some.
So we ran that last ad when Britney Spears' sister, forget her name now, but when she announced that she was pregnant at 16, we ran that in her home state. And within 4 hours, we had over 18,000 people come to PETA.org and learn about spay and neutering, which appears right after this ad on the website. Spaying and neutering is absolutely the single most important thing we can do to combat the overpopulation crisis. We run 3 mobile spay and neuter clinics. They go into low-income areas. We spay at low cost to no cost. They're all subsidized. We do over 12,000 animals a year. And if you think about it, it's not just those 12,000 we do. It's if even half of them had just 1 litter, and even if none of the animals in that litter went on to reproduce, which is all ridiculous because they all would have multiple litters and go on to reproduce. We are saving hundreds of thousands of animals from being homeless every year. And I think that's the key. Finding a home for a dog, one dog, is a lovely, lovely thing. But paying for somebody who perhaps can't afford to spay or neuter their animal saves countless more over the years ahead. You have saved far more than that one placement. A dog or a cat is a lifetime responsibility. They're not accoutrements to our lifestyle, even though they're sometimes treated that way. They're not arm candy, the way Britney Spears and Paris Hilton think of them. They're not toys. They're other lives. They're just like us, and their happiness is in our hands. Because we've domesticated them, they can't look after themselves anymore. They can't find water if they want it. They can't go and turn on our tap. They're not free even to go outside to urinate if they don't have permission from us. So I ask people, please, if your dog wants to go out, don't put it off. Go now. You're the only hope they have. Make sure that they have clean food and water. Think about what they want. What is their life? Yesterday, I watched a man on his mobile phone walking his dog, and I see this all the time. And he was so engrossed in his, I'm sure, earth-shattering conversation or vital appointment. And his dog is trying to lift his leg, and the man is just barreling down the street, and this dog on 3 legs is tripoding down the street after him. I mean, how little respect, how little an animal needs, and he can't put down his mobile phone. So there was recently an Rspca study that found that 63% of dogs, of people who have dogs in their home, keep them inside too long when they need to relieve themselves. And many people do not even provide clean water or a bowl, a special bowl, or a bed for their animals. I believe they should be on your bed, but that's it. God knows what else they don't do. So please, if you have an animal at home, remember, when you come home, you're the Beatles to them. That is the highlight of their day. So don't just ignore them. When you go to work, don't leave them with their legs crossed for your 8 hours or however many it is. Be like this gentleman here and bring them with you. They have no other life. So each of us also has the power to end animal overpopulation, the dog and cat crisis. Please get our literature, get our videos, do whatever you can to tell people never go to the breeder, never go to the pet shop, but always spay and neuter and go to the shelter. And finally, if you thought finally wasn't, oh no, I missed one. Okay, you have to see this one. John McEnroe.
What are you doing here? You're John McEnroe. Here to get my dog neutered. I would never do that to my dog.
You cannot be serious. Neutering is good for his temper. And it's the most important thing you can do for homeless animals. Did you know that shelters have to kill more than 4 million animals every year just because there's not enough good homes out there? I can't have that on my conscience. Can you?
I was actually talking about the outfit.
What, you don't like it?
It's ostentatious. Sorry.
I've lost a page. John McEnroe, very helpful. Can you see if you can find it? So I'm going to leave you with this long thought. Don't be relieved yet. We should be in awe of animals. It isn't because of the animals that the sun is searing into the earth, bringing starvation to the peoples of Africa. It isn't because of animals that the ice caps are melting, that no one can drink from our waterways, that sparrows are dying, that frogs are disappearing, that penguins are found floating dead in the Antarctic. Even in places as pristine as Alaska, until we came along, millions of animals, from walruses to beavers to birds to insects to eagles, songbirds, foxes, lived there for millennia without despoiling a thing. Turtles navigate by the Earth's electromagnetic field, birds by the stars. An albatross was the first individual to know that the Earth was round, not a human being. Dolphins use sonar, and we copy from them. Ants construct boats to cross mighty rivers. The Congo is disappearing, yet the animals know that in just a few square yards of the Congolese jungle, you can find wild mushrooms, yams, different kinds of seasonal fruits, the bark of a tree that contains antibiotics, a bark that tastes like garlic, edible vines, even a sapling that cures a headache. In those jungles are millions upon millions upon millions of animals of all kinds. Yet unlike our cities, their ground is rich with vegetation. The forest canopy provides shade. The rivers are clear and the food is abundant. But it will all be gone, not because of them, but because we humans have so much greed. Not need, just greed. We tear down their homes and their resources because we want more rubber, we want more minerals, more logs, more lumber, more of everything. Animals are great role models. We should look at them and listen and watch what they do. They eat what nature intended them to eat. They remain healthy. They use natural medicines. Gorillas actually grind volcanic soil into ash, and they swallow it to rid their bodies of toxins. Starlings use aromatic herbs, and they weave them into their nests so that they can keep their young free of mites. Cockatoos in the jungle eat clay to prevent cancer, something they die of, not in the jungle, but in captivity, if the great loneliness of being kept in a cage, unable to fly, doesn't get to them first. We should be in awe. Animals have cultures, they have languages. Elephants communicate subsonically at frequencies that we can't hear, and many animals do that. Rhinos use breathing signals to talk to each other, and tree frogs tap out their messages on logs. Even the tiniest insect produces too high a pitched sound for us to hear without instrumentation. And it's now thought that cows communicate with facial expressions they can read, but we don't have a clue about. Studies have shown that prairie dogs use nouns and verbs. They have different words by which they can tell each other how many people are entering a field and what sort of people, whether it's a man, it's a dog, it's two people, it's a crowd, it's people they know, it's a bulldozer. And yet they are being bulldozed, and they're being vacuumed out of their dens and sold in pet shops, and they die in people's homes because people do not know how to take care of them. And they die in their hearts of the great loneliness of being separated from their family, their loved ones, their friends, their villages. And what do? We go into space. We have Seti. We train our telescopes and our listening devices, desperate to find out if there is intelligent life in the universe. There is intelligent life in the universe. It's all around us. But what do we do with it? We experiment on it. We eat it. We cut it up, and we make it into clothing and shoes. It isn't easy to change society. In Washington, D.C., where PETA is headquartered, there is a college for the deaf called Gallaudet College for the Deaf. And years ago, I will always remember this, they were furious. The students actually went on strike because the governing body would not appoint a deaf president. Every time there was a new president, it was a hearing president. And the deaf students had had enough. So they walked out of class, they had sit-ins, they were just uncontrollable. And so the governing body appointed a deaf president. And the leader of the student revolt wrote an editorial in the Washington Post, which I kept. I'll never forget it. He wrote, "When slaves rose up against their masters, whites weren't ready, but the slaves were. When women demanded the vote, men weren't ready, but women were. And hearing people may not be ready for us to get a deaf president, but we're ready." And I thought to myself, yes, human beings may not be ready to afford respect to all the other living individuals on the face of the earth, but by God, they're ready. And I hope we can do something to make that happen for them. Thank you very much.